Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 is a well-known verse from the Bible that holds deep significance for many believers. It reads, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." In just a few words, this verse encapsulates a profound message of God's care, guidance, and purpose for His people. While expanding on this verse in 3,000 words may seem challenging, we can delve into its historical context, its theological implications, and its practical application in the lives of believers. To fully grasp the meaning of Jeremiah 29:11, it is important to understand the background of the book of Jeremiah and the historical circumstances in which it was written. Jeremiah was a prophet called by God to deliver messages to the people of Judah during a time of great turmoil and impending judgment. The people of Judah had strayed from God and were facing the consequences of their disobedience. The prophet's role was to convey God's words of warning, correction, and restoration. In chapter 29 of Jeremiah, the prophet addresses the exiles from Judah who had been taken captive and were living in Babylon. These exiles were facing uncertainty, despair, and a sense of hopelessness. They were longing for deliverance and restoration to their homeland. It is in this context that God speaks through Jeremiah to offer them a message of comfort, hope, and assurance of His plans for their future. The key phrase in Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 is, "For I know the plans I have for you." This declaration reveals a crucial aspect of God's character and His relationship with His people. It underscores His omniscience, indicating that God has perfect knowledge and understanding of the future. He is aware of the circumstances and challenges that His people face, and He has a purposeful plan for their lives. God's plans for His people, as stated in the verse, are described as plans to prosper and not to harm, plans to give hope and a future. This emphasizes God's goodness, faithfulness, and desire to bless His people. It reassures them that even in the midst of difficult circumstances, God has their best interests at heart. His plans are not meant to bring harm or destruction, but rather to bring about their welfare, prosperity, and a sense of hope. The verse also reveals God's intention to give His people a future. It assures them that their current situation is not the end of the story. Despite their exile and displacement, God has a long-term plan for their restoration, renewal, and a hope-filled future. This promise of a future carries the idea of continuity, purpose, and a sense of destiny. It encourages the exiles to hold on to their faith and trust in God's sovereignty, even when the present circumstances seem bleak. From a theological perspective, Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 reflects God's sovereignty, His faithfulness to His covenant promises, and His redemptive plan for His people. It emphasizes the concept of divine providence, the belief that God is actively involved in the affairs of humanity and is working out His purposes in history. The verse highlights God's commitment to His people, assuring them that His plans for them are rooted in love, care, and a desire for their well-being. Furthermore, Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 has broader application beyond its original context. While it was initially addressed to the exiles in Babylon, the principles contained in this verse can be extended to believers today. It conveys a universal truth about God's character and His intentions toward His people. It reminds believers that God has plans for their lives as well, plans that are good, purposeful, and filled with hope. Practically applying Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 involves recognizing and embracing God's sovereignty and His purposes for our lives. It requires trust in His wisdom and timing, even when we may face challenging or uncertain circumstances. Believers are called to seek God's will, align their desires with His plans, and remain faithful to His leading. It involves surrendering our own agendas and trusting in God's guidance, even when His plans may differ from our own. The verse also encourages believers to hold on to hope in the midst of trials and difficulties. It reminds them that God's plans are not thwarted by temporary setbacks or hardships. Even in times of adversity, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events for our ultimate good. This assurance of God's plans gives believers confidence, perseverance, and resilience to navigate the ups and downs of life. Moreover, Jeremiah 29:11 reminds believers that their lives have a purpose and meaning. It reassures them that they are not aimlessly drifting through life, but are part of God's larger redemptive story. It invites believers to seek and discover God's specific plans for their lives, utilizing their gifts, talents, and opportunities to fulfill the purposes that God has ordained for them. In conclusion, Jeremiah 29:11 is a verse that conveys a powerful message of God's care, guidance, and purpose for His people. It assures believers that God has plans for their lives that are rooted in His goodness, faithfulness, and desire for their well-being. This verse speaks of hope, future, and assurance, inviting believers to trust in God's sovereignty, seek His will, and find purpose and meaning in their lives. By embracing the truth of Jeremiah 29:11, believers can experience peace, hope, and confidence in God's providential care.